Kim Cho, and welcome to the Wendell Effect for the Indian markets. My name is Brandon Wendell. I'll be your guide for the markets coming up this week, or at least my view of these markets. Before we get started, just need to remind you that we are not broker-dealers or investment advisors. We're taking a look at this information from an educational standpoint only, not telling you to buy, sell, or hold any particular securities. And past performance, no indication of future results. We're also not subject to trading restrictions. We got a position of security, initiate one at any time. That being said, stay in touch with me. You can send me feedback at brandonwendell.cmt@gmail.com. Also hit me up on Twitter at TraderBW. You can follow me there as well for more info. And you can always catch us here at YouTube on the Wendell Effect. So for this week of October 30th, we'll take a look and see what's going on. The market looked kind of mixed for the week. We got a bunch of bright reds and a bunch of greens as well across the board. So it's a mixed bag altogether. Looking at the Nifty for the weekly chart, it was a very small candle because of that, because we had both buying and selling pressure mixed. After we gapped up, we didn't really go anywhere. So the big question is, will we be able to break this high? And if we do, will we be above 60 on the RSI? If we're not above 60, then we're likely to break down, and I don't think we're going to crash or anything like that. I think it's just going to be a bit sideways movement in the markets. Going down to the daily chart, by the way, if we do break above 60 on the RSI, that'll give us the momentum we need to break above 18,096 to get to 18,478. That's the next target. On the daily chart, same thing. We had this pullback. We are impulsing up. We're stalling right now at the 100%, just above it actually. And in order to break this prior high, you really want to see more momentum. So as we come up to that supply zone, or not supply zone, the prior high, which is our next target, 18,000, you really need to see the momentum on the RSI showing more bullish momentum to create a much newer high that we had before. If not, then look for a pullback. Honestly, it looks like the market may be a bit choppy and sideways this week. And on the 4-hour chart, same picture. Again, when we make new highs, you want to see more momentum, not less. So as of right now, we're making some highs without more momentum, and that's kind of turning us a little sideways here. Reliance, which is obviously one of the big players on that market, whoops, there we go. You can see that we had impulse up, corrected down about, on this move up, and this is actually the Fibonacci from this impulse down, which actually I should get rid of. But really, we retraced about 50% and now impulsing up again. And we're going to get through this little band of supply right here. So it looks like Reliance still has some room to go to the next target at 25.46. Then if we do still have bullish momentum, like I said, we're having some struggles here. We're making a new high in price, but we're doing it with the same momentum, not more. And that's not usually sufficient. So we may get a pullback coming pretty soon on Reliance before we can go higher. Let's take a look real quick at the stock itself on the charts here. Let's bring it up under stocks. There we are. And now we can take a better look at this, because again, it looks as though it wants to go a bit higher, but we may run into a little bit of a pullback first. So I'm going to drop down to, say, 60-minute time frame. And, well, yeah, it really did lose some momentum here, didn't it, as we were moving up. Even if I go to the 4-hour, let's see if we got a better picture. This is demand if it does pull back. We won't drop all the way down, but we could drop down to this level, which is 24.61, 24.33 before we go higher. So watch out for a pullback on Reliance if it happens. Anyway, Reliance seasonally, I got that also marked off. It actually is pretty bearish for this time of year. You can see from October 31st to November 12th, it has gone up only 33% of the time. The majority of the time, it's gone down this time of year. So that's suggesting we are going to get that pullback on Reliance, because seasonally it just doesn't do well this time. And it actually continues to go down into mid-November typically. Infosys, we have stalling out. It came up close to 1543, and as you can see, we are losing momentum. That's suggesting Infosys might be pulling back a little bit as well. So keep an eye out for that. On HDFC Bank, on the daily chart, we are stuck sideways. I thought for sure we were going to push back down, but after earnings, we popped up a little bit, but couldn't really sustain the new highs because we have no momentum. And we've completely lost momentum here, so it looks as though we're just going to be choppy, moving sideways for the next week, unfortunately. And this was one I was looking at for a trade opportunity, and fortunately missed my entry by a few points there, a few ticks, or a few rupees really. And it came back down again. This time we're below 40, just like we were before. Remember, when you're below 40 and try to make a move up in price, very rarely will you make a new high. So even though we did bounce here a little bit, we're not going to make a new high. We'll probably stall out just before 1700 on this stock. So I'm not interested in buying this anymore. I have to abandon that trade. If you got profits on it, this is selling pressure coming in. Be careful. You may need to book your profits. Tighten your stop at least. Going into the Nifty Bank weekly chart, same picture we saw in the Nifty. We try to make new highs here. We'll have to watch for that. We're only going to be able to keep those highs if we have more momentum. If the RSI is lower than it was on the previous peak, it'll be a false break, and we'll get a really nasty drop here down to 35.5. So keep an eye out for that. On the daily chart, we pretty much, we had a move up, and our previous impulse made the same move. And again, we're getting a little divergence. This is suggesting we're going to go a bit choppy and sideways for the next week. And the same thing's being shown here on the 4-hour chart. We're losing momentum, which is suggesting sideways movement. So be very careful out there. Day trading might be a lot better than trying to go a longer time frame. And I had these other trade ideas we were looking at. ITC never moved back down into our entry, I believe. And Ashok Leland actually did finally move into our entry, and it's still valid as a short. It did not move into bullish territory, so it looks as though we're still getting ready to turn around. If you didn't make the entry yet, there's still a possibility for a short here, and it's a 149. I got the targets on the previous video. You'd have to look that up. Motherson daily chart, unfortunately, never made a move into my entry, so I'm going to go ahead and abandon this. We're already halfway to the target. We can keep an eye on it, but it doesn't look like it's doing much, unfortunately. And finally, Central Bank of India teased us. Look at that. It came so close to the entry, just missed. Of course, I couldn't enter because the RSI is too high, but if we move back up there and do touch the supply zone, if we touch it with a lower high, then we'll drop pretty quickly, so keep an eye out for that. Anyway, that's what I got for you for this week for the Indian markets. Thank you very much for being with me. If you got any questions, feel free to contact me via my email or on the Twitter or on YouTube. And until next time, trade safe, trade well, and take care, everybody.